And this afternoon, we are there to honor introducing uh, some historical figures, sometimes hysterical, I think. Sorry. I'll have that side of the room, yeah. Anyway, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And as I said, it's an honor and privilege to introduce and moderate this panel. This panel. You want to talk about history? There's a lot of it sitting up here on at the podium here, at the table. And I know I have appreciated the help and the work that they've done for us. These guys have, what these people have done is built the foundation for what program we have today. And we've seen the future with the drones and such. But let's take a minute here and go back and reflect where we were at 40 years ago and how this program was built, not just to the association, but with the combined efforts of the Ag Department and NDSU Research. So with that, we have here Myron Dieterle. He was one of the first presidents of the association and was also involved with some of the lobbying efforts uh, with the legislature. Ken Harris was with the Department of Ag for quite a number of years, so he goes back a little ways. Randy Melhoff, former executive secretary. He's the longest reigning secretary that we have. And then the spring chicken here is Merlin, executive secretary and lobbyist for the organization for a lot longer than the secretary. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the boys. And first question I have for them is what were some of the biggest challenges you had? I'd say point that to Myron. What are the challenges that you saw ahead of you as you started the association?
A little bit about my background before I answer the question. And if I get sidetracked, then you can correct the question. I looked around the room when I came in to see if there was a clock anywhere. I looked at your schedule. We're scheduled for an hour. I don't see a clock, so I'll try and shut up sooner rather than later. But I when the legislative session enacted law which enabled the organization of county and city lead boards, I was in Sheridan County. My dad I was farming with at that time, and there was a hearing scheduled in our county at in August, and the particular day it was 90 degrees, so it kind of was an ideal harvest day. And Dad had said before the notice was published, he said, this is taxpayer money. It's important to be involved. And so he impressed on me that I should go to that meeting. I went to the meeting, and at the appointed time, shortly before the county auditor came in, it was him, and it was me. Needless to say, the county commissioners appointed me as one of the founding county members, and I farmed at that time. I still farm now. I'm the active person there 24/7. My sons, 3 of them, farm with me and are full-time employed. Nothing in regards to the association, just an interest in how I got involved in weed control at a county and later a state level. In the organization, the meeting, after being appointed to a county, then the auditor, once we had a full board, said, well, you gentlemen better start taking a per diem and mileage because at some point you'll be expected to do more things. And eventually we did. Eventually the Ag Department, under the leadership of Glenn Johnson, started an organizational of what was to become the North Dakota Weed Control Association. And I was not one of the area people that was a part of the original organizational board. And when the first convention was held, at that time we needed to approve bylaws, etc. And I made the mistake, representing my county, of getting up and speaking apart about a concern of the original bylaws. And then after we were organized as an organization, then we had election of area representatives, and I was the only person elected to the board of the official North Dakota Weed Control Association that wasn't one of the organizing board members. And so a little bit about the history. The convention date changed many times until it came to this time of year, simply because of the need to have a set time, because most organizations do have a set time when they meet, and that way it coordinates with availability of facilities. And as far as challenges, I never looked at anything as challenges. It was more education. You need to educate the people that you want to be aware of what your situation is. And so through the years, the board, you people that are here, have educated those around of your need in weed control. As I was looking at your exhibit area, I was very pleased with the poster contest and the imagination of the young people. And a very good tool to get people involved when they're in formative years of recognizing what weed control is. I initially, when the first convention was for the program, and we were looking at what we wanted to do as an organization, we brought in people from Nebraska, we brought in people from other areas, because we didn't know what the role of a weed officer, weed board should be. In Nebraska, they wore badges, and they actually had the powers and capabilities of law enforcement. We took the approach that was opposite of that in doing education and trying to work with, and not trying to enforce. And so that was some of the founding ideas in organizing this organization. I guess to me, the greatest privilege I had probably was working as your lobbyist. And during that period that I worked as lobbyist, I can remember Wayne Colbert not being able to speak at a legislative session. He says, Myron, he says, can you go in my place? He said, I've got written testimony. He said, just read it. And I did. But I will tell you, if you ever do that, your words are going to be different than someone else's. And so when the questions come on what you read, it's a different thought process. So if you're ever involved, the greatest impression you can make at a legislative committee hearing or otherwise is to speak what you know, which are your words. Thank you very much, Stan.
He said everything I was going to say. No. Actually, my name is Randy Melhoff, and I served as the executive secretary, which Merlin is currently holds that position. And I was started that position, I think, in 1996. And we just heard from Myron Dieterle about how this organization got started. And I wasn't really a part of that, but when Wayne Kohlberg, the original executive secretary, and I think he might have even been president of the organization, he was the very first president. Wayne Kohlberg was a Cass County extension agent. He was also the Cass County weed control officer, and he worked for NDSU Extension. And uh, about 10 or 12 years after the association started, Wayne decided that he wanted to sit back, retire, and enjoy life a little bit without the pressures of starting a new organization. And so they started a hunt for a new executive secretary. And I was an extension agent in Rockford, North Dakota. That's Eddy County. And I exhibited a little bit of interest in that position because I'm passionate about weed control. And talking with the board of directors and Wayne Kohlberg, correct me if I'm wrong, when this organization started, the institutions or the organizations that were really uh, the principal organizations that got it started was NDSU Extension, of course, the North Dakota Department of Ag, and Wayne Kohlberg and Dr. Rod Lim. We all remember him about Dr. Leafy Spurge. And it was a lot of work with NDSU Extension to get this organization started and they were successful. And so what I'm doing now is when Wayne Kohlberg decided to sit back, hopefully you all think about NDSU Extension the same way that I do. We have extension people in every county. Hopefully they're a great resource for you. And because we're so involved in every county and everything like that, and since this was still a brand new association, the board and everybody felt that it would be a big help if whoever took over the position was associated with extension. And so I think that's why I got the job, not because I know everything or I'm a great big hard worker or anything, but it was very important for the association to remain in that relationship with the extension service. The extension service is an educational body. Of course, weed control officers, have a little bit of enforcement authority. But speaking with my colleague Rick Schmidt from Oliver County, in reality, the weed control officer and the extension folks are education people. And a good point that Rick made is that the weed control officer doesn't usually make the decision to find somebody or anything. It's the board of directors. And so, even though even though there might be a little bit of a conflict of interest if you're an extension agent and a weed control officer, I think they both are very good together. And so I started as director here in 1996, the executive secretary, excuse me. And the main reason for that was so that this organization, this association, would continue a relationship with the extension service. And just being here today, I can see that relationship is continuing, and I think that's very important. And so I served as the executive secretary for 12 years, maybe 13. Merlin's going to bypass me here next year, but I just want to say that the real joy I got out of being with this association at the time I got in had a lot to do with Ken Harris. Ken was a hard worker. He is a dedicated, no one more dedicated and hard working than Ken Harris. My relationship with a lady named Cindy Heiser, who later on became married. Her name was Cindy Fuger. She was the biocontrol specialist for the North Dakota Department of Ag. And real excellent, enjoyable, and impactful things that I was involved with was I was involved with this association when they first started flea beetle collections. And I remember getting a call from Cindy and meeting with her and Commissioner Sarah Vogel at some wildlife place by Valley Sea. I'm not even sure where it was, but it was the very first collection of flea beetles for leafy spurge. And we know that today that is probably one of the best programs that we've had within this association, and I hope hopefully we continue. But I just wanted to just reiterate that I enjoyed my 12, 13 years as executive secretary. It kept the association uh, uh, highly involved with the extension service, and that's one thing that we really don't want to lose in this association is our relationship with the NDSU extension. There are two entities that work very well together, and and they just are good for the county. I guess the last thing I wanted to say is being with this association is I'm on a lot of boards and I belong to a lot of groups, a lot of societies and things like that. The North Dakota Weed Control Association is definitely the one that I treasure the most, and there's only one reason for that, because all of you folks that are sitting out there, you're grassroots farmers, ranchers, weed control people. You're the people with the boots on the ground. You know, you're not some of you might be PhDs, but you're not those big high level individuals that everybody thinks needs to have a lot of respect. It's you folks out there that deserve that respect because your boots are on the ground. You're working with the local landowners. You're working with the people that depend on us. So I will always be a part of this association as long as things like that continue. And I just want to say one thing. When I left 13 years ago, one of my concerns was how strong this association would be in the future. And seeing what I see here now, this organization, this association is actually better. It's better positioned today than it was when I left. So kudos to the board of directors. Kudos to Merlin and his wife, because I know she does most of the work. And like mine did. Anyway, just thank you for inviting me, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll be around until tomorrow. So if you have any questions or want to hear some really cool stories, I got some good ones for you. You know, like the time I delivered 15 sets of Aphthona flea beetles for a landowner in his pasture because I'm from Eddy County. Eddy County is the smallest county in North Dakota, but when I took over as county extension agent, it had the most acres of leafy spurge than any county in North Dakota. And so that's why I hopped on that bandwagon right away. But I just remember one story. If you really want to make friends with your landowners, deliver flea beetles to them. Just knock on their door and say, I got some flea beetles to control your spurge. And that, you get a good reception every time. But the one story I was just going to share was I spent a morning releasing flea beetles for a landowner who had a complete full section of pasture that was really nothing but spurge. And so we released the flea beetles, and I got a call the next day, and here an aerial pilot sprayed the wrong section for spurge, and he sprayed the section that we put the bugs on. So anyway, I got a lot of stories like that. Those were very early releases. Those were the Aphthona nigroscutus. Those were the copper colored bugs. And you know, for after about 3 to 5 years, you know, they kind of controlled the spot, but they didn't get much further out than the spot where you put them. And then when they Aphthona lacertosa, the black came out, that really made a big impact. And I'm just very proud that I was be able to be a part of that. And by George, there's hardly any leafy spurge in any county anymore. So anyway, with that, any questions? We'll give it to Ken here.
Please excuse, I'm gonna sip my back is about no very good. I guess I worked with the weed boards and the weed control association levels, and I was on secretary for weed boards in 4 different counties. So you can work with 4 different weed boards, very good weed boards in every instance. And each operated a little bit different, unique to themselves, and yet they got the job done very well. Also was I had the opportunity to work with the same weed boards, in the association as an employee of the North Dakota Plant Meetings and not Sweetsmiths was the things that impressed me about it, I guess, as far as the association goes, as I look out here now, I see some folks in here from the North Dakota Game and Fish. I know there's people from U.S. Fish and Fish and Wildlife. I know there's people from the Corps of Engineers. I think for being inclusive and inviting and welcoming these agencies and these people in has been a very important part of your organization. Those folks all work with their land good and work with their front. And I think involving them has been one of the best things that happened time I've been here. Some other things that I've seen that I've really been impressed with over the years. There was a period of time there was a no lead officer school. We built right here in Jim McAllister here. And I was outstanding. It really, really was. I don't know if they still do. I used to go around and do weed ID clinics and I don't know how many places across the state. I know I chased the radiator gap a lot for those. But it's pretty hard to do any work unless you know what your enemy is. And so weed ID is very important. Um, those types of schools that I saw that they put on, they had some up at Washburn, different places to keep their people abreast, train their people, train their co-workers. A very important part that I saw that I felt the Weed and Control Association was very instrumental in doing. And that's the part that I guess I was most involved in. And I guess I just was a small part of it. Because I had people like Bill Ranger, Jim McAllister, Chuck Weiser, Daryl Fick, people like that were the ones that really made those wheels turn. Any questions, just bark them out.
I just have to add that thinking about how different we were back then. You mentioned let's see. Well, there was Daryl Fick and was it Bill Beam? Was it the guy that had the Jerome Beam? Yeah. Anyway, these guys it's called innovation. If you go on from Minot towards Kenmare, there's all those ravines and things, and they were nothing but spurge. And it was the Ward County guys, and when the Aphthona lacertosa looked like it was making a big impact, you know how those guys spread those flea beetles? They jumped in a helicopter, and they had a helicopter, and they had all these sites, and they just dropped them off the helicopter. And lo and behold, today, I think I said something wrong, but anyway, lo and behold, today I don't see any spurge anymore. Correct me, Ken.
The drone beams J3. What they use is a little containers that you put ice cream in. I think they're 1 pints. They take a hole punch and punch holes all around them. Took a piece of plastic surveyor's tape, taped it on, and wrapped it loosely around it to cover those holes. Put the flea beetles in, put the cover on, and filled boxes and boxes and boxes. When they went out and did this, of course, you sit one in front of the other. When you're in this plane, there was no room for anything else other than butter. They flew all those draws in the Lac River Valley, especially with some service. Yeah. Chuck Weiser was just pitching them out, pitching them out, pitching them out. And as they went down, hit them unwound. And when they hit the ground, all the holes were open. Flea beetles got out. Away they went. It did in a year and a half, or actually years flying. I guess it was good. And then part of another year, they covered that whole thing. And anytime you drove that valley in June, it was completely yellowish green, all the way from Minot all the way to Kenmare. And you'll be very fortunate if you see very much of it now. That Chuck Weiser's, we lost him this last summer, and we lost. Yeah, he was a tremendous man. That was his idea with the ice cream containers in the plant.
Yeah, those were the good old days, Merlin.
Okay, I guess I'm the new guy in the bunch. Uh, Ken Ayers, I'm gonna try to tell everybody, Ken Ayers, he did a lot of salt cedar that he didn't mention. He was the king of salt cedar to get rid of it. I think he could smell salt cedar a mile away. They had them four-wheelers. They came down to my county one year and went around Lake Shred
we got stuck a few times, but we got through it and found a lot of grants and we got that money from the legislature. Mayor and being a lobbyist, I being a lobbyist, we worked pretty hard with them to get the money to do that funding, which included equipment, which was kind of unusual. And we had a department like 10 yards down and testifying and showing the need for it. And that was pretty special to get that all done. Uh, I was on the, I got on the board in 95 as a director from South Central here, Area 4. At that time, board was consisted of uh, 2 directors from each area, a board member, and a weed officer. Because the board members didn't want to give up hold to this association with just a bunch of weed officers, right, Myron? Right. And so they had to split, and then they elected the president amongst themselves, and most of the time they re-elected him. There was, to where they were on for years. In '96, they were working when I got on already at the committee. They were working on vitamins. In '96, they completely changed the bylaws to where what we have today of um, your president, your second, and your first vice, and then only 5 directors. Um, that's when Wayne got off. We uh, hired Randy. I was on the committee um, to narrow down the applicants to basically 2, and then the board took it from there, and we hired Randy. Um, so I was on the board with Wayne. I was on the board with Randy, and then when Randy quit, because he quit basically, he took over Langdon Research Center, and it was just too much for him to do everything. And so he reluctantly wanted, he had to one or the other. And, so he gave up this, and we hired Becky Schrader at that time. And so I was on the board with her. And then while I was on then, I was getting tired of being on the board, but my area kept electing me and electing me. We had no term limits. So I got term limits into the bylaws. And I remember we drew straws, 7 seats, after the board meeting after the conference, and we were pulling straws to see which director got the long straw and had to serve the full 6-year term. And unfortunately, I think it was rigged with the guy on the left here. And I ended up with the full 6-year term. The guy that won it ended up full term. And I just got put back. He left gone. So he went 8 more years. And but anyway, when I got I got done with I termed out, and then Becky resigned, and I was encouraged at that time to apply for the position of executive secretary, and I was appointed the position, and we had the first year or 2 was a lot of cleanup and straighten things out, but I'm pretty proud of the organization. Um, like I said yesterday when we did the financial report, we've got 111,000 in the bank. And I would never believe that 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago. So, hats off to the board for keeping everything going and staying under budget year after year. That's the key. But I've been a lobbyist. Myron was a lobbyist. He was looking at trying to get off being the lobbyist, and so I called in '95 to testify at a hearing on the Ag Department's budget. And for some reason, Myron must have liked what I was talking about, and he came up to me and said, "You'd be a good lobbyist for the association." And he says, "But he said, don't worry, he said, I'll be around." And he was. We did 95 together, and 97 he turned it over to me. I brought him in. I brought him in numerous times over the years to testify. Um, and we got to the point where when we walk, two of us walk into into the legislature area, just out in the air in the hallway, and the senators with their representatives would see us, and they'd go, "Okay, what do you want today? How much do you need? What are you looking for? What bill do you have?" We even got slang. One of the senators calls us the M&M boys. So you got to build that reputation, and the association has always had a good reputation. It probably will continue. 40 years doesn't seem like a long time when you've been involved with it for over 30. So Randy was a very good secretary. I mean, I do a lot of things. I mirror off what he did. And Richie made mistakes by it since I was on the board. I try to correct those mistakes and do better. So I thank him for making mistakes. It helped. So, but anyway, not to stand your thunder, but I think what we should do is, I know there's some board members in here that have been around for a long time. I think it would be nice to hear a little bit from what they have to say. Because there's some of these have been coming to the conferences long back. So, yeah.
Just to finish your question of some of the challenges, I do want to recognize the Game and Fish Department people for being here. And I don't know if we got U.S. Fish and Wildlife here, but I do remember when I first became secretary, that was one of the big issues we had, was trying to get our Game and Fish and our Fish and Wildlife people to control weeds on their lands. And whether they mow it, I know they don't like to spray it. Nobody likes to spray, but one of the big, huge challenges we had back then was getting these getting these institutions involved with us, and I think it's been very successful. I'm very thankful to see the Game and Fish guys here, and it shows that they're dedicated to weed control.
On that comment of North Dakota Game and Fish, kudos to you, because I live next to the Lone Tree Management Area, 30,000 acres, and they set an example for adjacent landowners in weed control.
And again, thank you, Game and Fish.
I think all the agencies that I think have been very exemplary in what they've done. The whole piece of company line, his office out of Williston, and Munswogger's office. First of the salt cedar on Yellowstone River and reported it. Very instrumental in continuing monitoring of the others. Did some absolutely wonderful things as far as other weed control. The first salt cedar on the Big Lake was found by Marvin Anderson, Oregon out there. It's by the Fish office out there. So we got really good response with those. If you ask them and fish, I want to maybe you're familiar, those of you in the Northeast would be, but official easements up in the Northeast or across the whole state caused a lot of very, very hard feelings, especially the later people that got that land, inherited or bought it. It caused it, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife was not a very welcome agency, and they had a young man or two there in the Devils Lake office, and I'll be danged if I can remember his name. He went to law school for a while, and he ended up going to Alaska in the same capacity, but he started working with those weed boards, and I was invited up to the Towner County Weed Board annual meeting banquet in Camden, and Roger was it? I'm trying to think of his last name. Who can think of his last name in here? But what? No. Anyway, he was chairman of the board, and he got up that night, and he said, "If someone had told me 3 years ago that A, we'd be having U.S. Fish and Wildlife staff at our meeting, and B, the guest of honor and our keynote speaker is the man from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife," he said, "I would have called you a liar." But that young man did such a wonderful job of working and mending across the fences and working across the fences I've seen that time and again, and I think that has to be continued on both sides. I mean, both of you reach out. Don't expect them to always be the person to put a plan down. The county people have to do the same. But I think that's very, very good. And I think it should be recognized.
I have kind of a question or Ken. Remember back we on the state knock weed list, and then there was a program for the Atris exchange. Can you can you bring that to mind? This is an interesting little story, I think.
Blue Stripe was very, very probably one of the nicest, toughest, most beautiful perennials to put in our perennial garden and through garden. Initially, it worked out just fine. It was a sterile cultivar. Things just rocked along. It was just things were good. Fortunately, a lot of times when things go haywire, uh, I'm not sure the exact source, but some of the wild loosestrife from Europe it was introduced into North America. It successfully crossed with that hybrid and produced a lot of seeds that's tremendously competitive. When I was at the Department of Ag, and that was a noxious weed, and you could talk to some of these weed officers that had urban responsibilities. Some of the things they were threatened with by homeowners and little old ladies when they were told to take their loosestrife out was pretty ugly. That's me a lot. So to try to use a carrot kind of instead of a stick, we worked with 4-H clubs. We furnished them with the pots. We furnished them with the growing material. We furnished them with the forms of the liatris. The liatris are a native prairie plant here, and grow them for the county weed boards, and the county weed boards that have exchange programs. And people come in and bring in their new strife. Some went 1 for 1, some 2 new strife, or two reactors for every new strife, however you want to do it, but created a positive image as far as trying to control the loose strife. Um, it worked quite well. I don't know how many years we did it. About 100 years now. It's brought a little light for green people. Because some of those lead officers really were ostracizing us, looking like old ladies. And so little old ladies.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, I was a recipient of that hostility. It was about 20 years ago. I started as a weed officer. One of the first things I had to do was to go through the process of the loose strife exchange. And yeah, little old ladies in Cass County, the weed officer finally put out a word and said, okay, if you haven't taken it out this year, you are going to be fined. People thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to go to jail. And so the proverbial hit the fan there in Cass County, and I think that's probably how some of this came out. And so we had to Cass County, I think we even gave out about 1,400 plants, 4-H planted them, worked out great. And I had little ladies come up, and I said, if you took it out, or a couple of years back, that's fine. You can still come in and get a plant exchange. And I had several of them point their finger at me. You get my name off that list. How do you know I took care of it? Well, dance a jig for me, and then we'll be good to go. They just looked at me. Really? It was funny watching that. Of course, I stood behind the 4-H kids. They were handing out the plants. I wasn't directly involved with that, but I think that helped to quell some of the animosity there. And so it was an interesting program. And these are some of the things that, as we work on projects, you got to think ahead a little bit and figure out, okay, how is this going to be perceived, and how are you actually going to be doing it? Uh, so, any other thoughts here?
That just kind of reminds me, I remember that program and, again, you tell nice ladies to take out their beautiful, beautiful purple plants and you're not very popular. But, I think, just, wanted to share with the people out there that this association also took a big step at working with, uh, companies that sold plant-based products. Or, I mean, plants like, flowers and whatever. Because my understanding is, I think at one time, didn't they sell salt cedar as an ornamental? So and this is one I just wanted to share with you that the association got involved with that. A lot of some of the weeds we consider noxious, they're selling it as ornamentals in the greenhouses and things. And so this association did, I think it was a 1 or 2 year effort to visit with all those greenhouses and the flower stores and make sure that they weren't selling salt cedar and purple loosestrife. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
A comment I wanted to make is, of course, the insects have been very successful in North Dakota. And a little bit of history and insight on that was a gentleman named Kelly Miller from Towner, McHenry County, was instrumental in going over to Europe and trying to see how they were controlling it there. Leave his church. And there was a gentleman named Bill Hanson who was a representative. And as a result of the efforts of those two people, both deceased, we found and worked with the Ag Department. We've always worked cooperatively with them. That bringing insects into the U.S. we couldn't do directly. And so what was done is the insects were brought into Canada, Manitoba, and Dr. Peter Harris did the initial test and trials. And a group from the Weed Control Association in Edward County took a bus and went up on a tour to see the success in Canada. And it was just amazing how the north slope of the hill had been wiped out of Leakersburg. But going on one step beyond that, Houston, which has been a troublesome weed, also has a biological agent. But in doing the research to bring it into the U.S., you can't bring it into the U.S. simply because of the fact there's a plant in California, which is an economically produced plant, which is susceptible to the same insect. The good side of the story is there's a water drainage from Canada into Montana, which is naturally bringing that insect here. Thank you.
I take it we're not supposed to go up into the watershed and find an infected plant and haul it home, right? The support from the Ag Department has been I've been very appreciative of that, especially in my early years when I started working. And Ken Harris and I had a little bit of an exchange with a landowner. 2 weeks into my work, I got a call from Ransom County. Hey, you got a house coming in your county, and we're going to get together. Invited Ken down, and so we're going to look at a few places and come on down to the cafe and we'll get things mapped out. So I go down there thinking, okay, we'll have 3, maybe 4 people there. And I see a table full of people. One of them is a newspaper reporter. And I'm going, okay, wonder what's up. I sit there and, we talk and map out and we take off and drive. First place we're going to stop is Cass County site, right? Southwest corner. Get up there and lo and behold, there's a pickup truck blocking the driveway into the farmstead that where the town's tongue is. And I am glad that the old gentleman there was not able to get up and walk around and use the cane and that pickup because he was tighter and tight, wound up because somehow the newspaper had gotten wind of this new weed in the county, in the area, And top page, you know, on the local newspaper, the gentleman opened it up for his morning coffee, and here was a picture of his farmstead. The indication that, as he perceived, he was the one that brought the weed in, and so it was a definite lesson of what not to do when you're going out to scout. But it took Ken and I and his renter to get him calmed down enough to just tiptoe across the yard to look over the fence and say, "Yeah, you got to meet there." And then we left. Remember that, Ken? That yeah, that was interesting. So that's the support that I received from the ag department, uh, and
You wanted me there because I'm not a fast runner.
any other comments? Any questions from anybody out there about events, memories, or something? Yeah, I know when I was at the SBAR meeting earlier in December, I ran into Senator Jerry Klein. He was at the meeting and said, "Well, how are the M&M boys doing?" So the reputation was there, and we appreciate the definite rapport that you guys have developed with the legislators. One thing that I know Merlin has told me many times, and I'm sure Myron also, there's no political letter for the wheat board, you know, the wheat association. We have issues, we have wants and needs, and that's what uh, they present to the legislators on our behalf. And so the work that these gentlemen have done has definitely built a foundation for us. And by golly, we're at the end of time. So I want to say we should give these gentlemen a round of applause for their work. And encourage you, if we've had a few beverages here, we could sit here all afternoon to listen and be entertained by some of the stories these guys have experienced over the years. Who had a cheesehead? Remember that? Yeah.
Well, that was 1999, and that was the year the Packers won the Super Bowl. I'm a Packer fan, and we had entertainment that night. The violinists, it was a family of violinists, and anyway, they were Packer fans too. So uh, I found out that the next week they were going to the Lambeau Field for a game, and they brought me back a cheese hat. So yes, I did. But you know, I just to finish, you know, these folks up here have done a lot of work to get this association on its feet. You know, you just can't imagine the challenges it was legislatively to have the legislature require weed boards, to require weed officers. And a real big thing was when these lobbyists were able to obtain the ERP fund, which provides funding for the landowner assistance program. So it's you'll never know how much work and effort and a little bit of luck that was involved getting this association going. And I just want to mention that because, like I said earlier, when I left, one of my concerns was, is this association going to stay strong? And it looks to be stronger than it was when I left. And the main thing too is for every one of you folks out there that are on your weed boards, you know, be proud of the work you do because, again, I'm proud to be a part of this association because you guys are grassroots people and you know that's the kind of people I like to work with. And so stay strong with your weed boards because the association is staying strong. And let's face it, one thing that's never going to happen is we're never going to get weeds out of here for good. They're going to be here forever, and we need to stay on top of it so they don't do what they want to do to us. So, Myron.
Not that last word, but how please mentor somebody to take your place when you retire. That's the biggest issue.
Right. As a matter of fact, I heard through some conversations that there's quite a few counties out there that maybe don't have weed control officers yet, but we need those. And so I wish you all a lot of luck. And like Myron said, be a little more dedicated than normal, and before you go off of your weed board, try to groom somebody else to take your place, because these boards are extremely important. And again, these folks went to a lot of work to get this association going, and now it's kind of your responsibility to keep it going. So other than that, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your expertise, time, and dedication to the association and to the work. Thanks again. Next item, I guess we're going out to the court.